Our Kids Network is a community collaborative of local organizations that all work together to help children and youth thrive in Halton. Recently, the group held their annual conference with this year's theme of belonging. I spoke with the executive director, Liz Wells, to get a sense of the conference results, but first inquired as to why belonging was chosen as the theme for this year's event.
So we chose belonging as the theme for this year's conference because research consistently shows us that there is a link between belonging and social connection and positive child and youth development and well-being. And we know that belonging reduces loneliness and isolation, and you are correct. These are key concerns for young people today. And the other reason why we chose belonging as the theme for this year's conference is because so many of our partners and local community organizations have identified belonging as a priority, a strategic priority or a goal or something that they're all working towards creating for families and kids and their programs and services and spaces, but everyone is doing it independently. And belonging is not an individual problem. It's actually a community responsibility. And we need to be collaborating and working intentionally to address that issue in Halton. And so the conference focused exactly on that. And we wanted to look at systemic solutions to creating belonging, things like the Canadian Mental Health Association's Solutions for Belonging framework. So we invited participants to learn about that and then to talk about how could they collaborate and work together to create those conditions within our community.
And I think nowadays belonging is even more difficult just because people are so separate. I mean, look, to have this conversation years ago, you and I would have to be in the same room, but we are now connecting on Zoom. And that can work both ways. That can be great because we can connect, but also people can become very reclusive and that can be damaging for kids. So when it comes down to the findings out of your conference, what are some practical ways communities can help reduce loneliness among children and youth?
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the conundrum of our time, right? If we've really embraced technology, but how do we continue to make sure that we're fostering real social connection between people because it's so critical to their well-being? So participants came up with an incredible amount of ideas and suggestions for how we could collaborate to practically create community or create belonging within our communities. And we analyze that to come up with the 4 different themes that everyone really shared and talked about. And the first was people really emphasized the importance of creating inclusive spaces. So we want to celebrate the diverse cultures that we have in Halton, and we want to make sure that we're celebrating that diversity within our programs and services, and so that we're creating spaces that are truly welcoming and that reflect that diversity that we see in the population throughout Halton and our different neighborhoods. Because when we're doing that and families feel like they can bring their whole selves in, it's really strengthening bonds between families, but also it's creating relationships and connections back to community itself. And relationships really are the roots of positive child and youth well-being.
Did you see any particular examples of organizations that are already doing this well that presented at the conference that you can cite here and maybe give that example so other organizations can also dive into something like that?
Absolutely. So we had a host of speakers, and one of them was from the Halton Multicultural Council in Halton, and this HMC Connections, and she was a fabulous speaker. And she really emphasized this, like the diversity, especially for newcomers who are really it's a struggle. It isn't at all what they may be used to. And they're coming here and looking for opportunities to connect in community. And it's a struggle to access services, to find employment, to find programs and services for their kids. And so that's a really great example. Also, the Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton was a speaker, and that was amazing. He really emphasized how when we create these inclusive spaces, young people have the opportunity to meet other young people that they may not have otherwise had that opportunity to meet. And then they're learning things like, what is Diwali, right? Like these questions that kids may have that they don't have that regular opportunity to engage with and understand. Another theme that came out of the conversations we had that day was the importance of youth voice and connection. So this is really, really critical for creating conditions for belonging because young people have a lot to offer, and we don't want to make decisions or create programs without their input. So if we can involve young people in the planning, we can give young people mentorship opportunities, we can give them volunteer opportunities. All of these things build leadership, resilience, confidence, and it also gives kids, again, that opportunity for social connection, which is so critical to their overall well-being. So the third point is in removing barriers. So someone said, and I thought this was so smart, who isn't attending? Why aren't they in this space? And why? Like, what could the reason be for why we're not seeing them here? We're building programs and services for young people and for families, but if they're not showing up, perhaps the program isn't accessible financially. Maybe it's not accessible by transit. Not all communities have access to public transit in the same ways. Every neighborhood is a little bit different. Are the programs accessible for neurodiverse children or children with special needs or diverse abilities? So I thought that was such a critical question to consider when we're talking about creating belonging and opportunities for social connection.